The sound of seagulls drifted faintly through the open window as Daniel Harper poured himself a cup of coffee, his wrinkled hands trembling slightly from age and memory. The morning sunlight reflected off the framed photographs that lined his kitchen wall, pictures of his daughter Emily as a child, laughing in the waves outside their beach house. That house was his heart, his escape, the place he and his late wife, Linda, had built from scratch 40 years ago when they could barely afford the wood to frame it. Every plank carried her touch. Every breeze still carried her scent. The phone buzzed suddenly, vibrating across the countertop, interrupting his nostalgia. The caller ID flashed Emily. His face lit up, unaware that the next 10 seconds would shatter his world. "Dad," came her voice, distant, careful, too calm. "We're going tomorrow," she said. "I sold the beach house." The mug slipped from Daniel's hand, smashing onto the floor, coffee splattering across his worn slippers. "You what?" he stammered, his breath catching. "I sold it," Emily repeated, voice tight. "We needed the money. It's done. Please don't make this harder." And then the line went dead. Daniel stood frozen, the silence pressing down on him like a heavy fog. The beach house, the only piece of Linda he still had, gone, sold without his permission, without even a conversation. For a long moment, he didn't move. Then, with a deep exhale, he whispered to himself, "Why, Emily? Why?" His voice cracked under the weight of disbelief. Outside, the sky turned gray, and the first hint of rain touched the window. Daniel moved to his recliner, lowering himself slowly, clutching his chest, not from pain, but from betrayal. He thought of all the times Emily had spent summers there, chasing fireflies with her mother, running barefoot across the pier, painting the walls of her room pink when she was 16. Every moment they'd shared in that house now felt tainted, turned to ash by a single phone call. But even through the ache, a father's heart doesn't stop loving. Between anger and sorrow, Daniel's mind wrestled with disbelief. Emily had always been the kind one, the responsible one, the reason he'd survived after Linda's passing. She was his light, the one who told him she'd take care of everything when his heart condition started getting worse. She'd handled the bills, the doctor visits, even the property paperwork. He'd trusted her blindly, never once thinking she'd misuse that trust. He rose shakily and looked at the photo of his wife on the mantel. "Did I fail her, Linda?" he whispered. "Did I raise her wrong?" The house seemed to answer with silence. He reached for his old cane and stepped out onto the porch. The autumn air was crisp, and the ocean beyond shimmered faintly through the distant clouds. That house had stood by the sea like a loyal friend, carrying their laughter and their grief through decades, and now it belonged to strangers. Daniel's thoughts drifted back to the day Linda died, how Emily had collapsed beside him in the hospital hallway, sobbing uncontrollably. They'd clung to each other then, promising never to let life pull them apart. So why did it feel like she'd just broken that promise? He tried to make sense of it. Maybe she was in trouble. Maybe she'd been pressured. But no explanation could soften the sting. He turned back inside and sat at the kitchen table, staring at the phone still lying there. He wanted to call her back, demand answers, but his trembling hands couldn't find the courage. His voice, when it finally came, was just a whisper into the empty room. "If you needed help, Emily, All you had to do was ask. But as he sat there, surrounded by quiet, a strange thought flickered through his mind. The tone of her voice. There was something unusual in it, something almost broken. It wasn't coldness he'd heard, it was fear. And though he didn't know it yet, that fear was not for herself, but for him. Because what he didn't know was that Emily's betrayal wasn't betrayal at all. It was a sacrifice, one she'd made to protect her father from something far darker than he could ever imagine. Emily Harper sat in her parked car outside the lawyer's office, hands gripping the steering wheel so tightly her knuckles turned white. The sound of the ocean echoed faintly through the half-open window, waves crashing against the shore like an accusation she couldn't escape. Her reflection in the rearview mirror looked older than her 32 years. Sleepless eyes, tear-streaked cheeks, and the kind of exhaustion that went deeper than the body. The words she'd spoken to her father replayed in her head again and again. "We're going tomorrow, Dad. I've sold the beach house." Each repetition sliced through her like glass. She had broken his heart and she knew it. But what choice had she really had? The papers were signed, the deal was done, and the money was already being transferred. It wasn't greed that drove her, it was desperation. Because what Daniel didn't know was that the past 6 months had been a nightmare. His heart condition had worsened, and despite the calm face she wore around him, the medical bills had grown monstrous. Insurance had stopped covering the advanced treatment his doctor said could prolong his life. And when the bank threatened to foreclose on his property due to unpaid taxes, something Daniel didn't even realize was happening, Emily had made a choice no daughter should ever have to make. She'd gone to every bank, begged for loans, and even tried selling her own apartment, but her husband Ryan's debts had already ruined their credit. Every door closed in her face. Every phone call ended with disappointment. Then one day, a man named Mr. Clybourne called her. He introduced himself as a buyer interested in her father's beach house. She told him it wasn't for sale, but he persisted, offering far more than it's worth. "You could save your father's life with this money," he'd said smoothly, sliding a check across his desk. Sometimes love means doing what hurts. Emily stared at that check for hours that night, tears dripping onto the paper as her husband begged her to accept. "You can buy another house someday, but you can't buy another chance to keep your father alive." Those words became her curse. The next morning, she made the call, and when her father picked up, she forced herself to sound distant, detached, because if she didn't, she'd break down crying and tell him everything. She couldn't risk that. Daniel's pride was as strong as his heart was fragile. He'd rather die than accept that his daughter had sold their family's legacy to save him. So she played the villain, swallowed her guilt, and signed away the home that carried every memory she loved. Now, sitting alone in her car, she whispered to herself, "I'm sorry, Dad. You'll hate me for this, but it's the only way you'll live." A soft knock on her car window startled her. It was Mrs. Evans, her father's neighbor, a kind widow who'd known their family for decades. "Emily, are you all right, dear?" she asked, peering inside with concern. Emily forced a smile and wiped her eyes quickly. "I'm fine," she lied. "Just running some errands for Dad." Mrs. Evans nodded, her expression kind but knowing. "You look tired, sweetheart. He's lucky to have you." As the older woman walked away, Emily exhaled shakily, biting her lip to stop the tears. "Lucky to have me," she thought bitterly. "If only you knew what I've done." Back at her apartment, Ryan sat hunched over his laptop, the glow of the screen highlighting the worry etched into his face. "Did it go through?" Emily nodded numbly. "The buyers signed everything. The funds will clear by tomorrow." Ryan stood and pulled her into his arms. "You did the right thing," he whispered. But Emily didn't feel right. She felt hollow.
"He'll never forgive me," she said quietly. "He'll think I betrayed my mom's memory." Ryan brushed a strand of hair from her face and said, "One day, when he's healthy again, he'll understand." But Emily wasn't so sure. She knew her father's love for that house was sacred. It was more than wood and walls. It was his connection to her mother. To him, selling it would feel like erasing her. And what hurt Emily most was knowing he'd see her as... Daniel didn't sleep that night. He sat in the dim light of his study, the old clock ticking softly behind him, counting every second of his heartbreak. The sea breeze slipped through the slightly open window, carrying the faint smell of salt and rain, the smell that always reminded him of Linda. He imagined her voice whispering through the wind, calm and soft, like it used to be when she'd reassure him during his worst days. "Patience, Danny. Everything has a reason." But tonight, patience felt like a cruel word. He picked up a faded photo album from the shelf, the one Emily made when she was 16. Each picture told the story of summers by the shore, the time they built a sandcastle taller than Emily herself, the night they danced under fireworks, the day Linda had painted seashells and written, "Home is where love stays." Daniel traced his finger over that line, his chest tightening. How could his daughter, the little girl who cried when they left that house after every summer, sell it away so easily? He tried to justify it. Maybe she was in trouble. Maybe it wasn't her fault. But the ache in his heart refused to believe excuses. Still, something about her voice during that phone call wouldn't leave his mind. It wasn't cold or careless. It was trembling, almost frightened. It was as if she'd been forcing herself to sound strong. That alone planted a small seed of doubt in Daniel's anger. Was she protecting me from something? He wondered. His logical mind pushed it away. "No," he murmured, shaking his head. "You're just making excuses because she's your daughter." Yet, deep down, a father's instinct whispered otherwise. He decided to drive to the beach house the next morning. Maybe it wasn't too late to stop the sale. The old pickup truck groaned as he turned the ignition, its headlights cutting through the gray dawn. As he drove along the coastal road, the world outside blurred between sea and sky. Every curve of that road was familiar. He had driven it countless times with Linda beside him, Emily singing in the back seat. By the time he reached the driveway, the sun had just begun to rise. The soft golden light bathed the house in memory, but something felt different. The for sale sign was gone. Confused, Daniel stepped closer, his cane pressing into the sand. The windows were locked, the curtains drawn, but through the dusty glass, he could still see the furniture, untouched, no moving boxes, no emptiness. It was as if no one had sold or moved a thing. He frowned, glancing toward the porch. There, tucked beneath the flower pot Linda had once painted blue, was an envelope sealed with a golden sticker. His name was written on it in familiar handwriting. Emily's. His heart pounded as he picked it up. The paper trembled in his hand as he sat on the porch steps and carefully tore it open. Inside was a letter written in hurried strokes. "Dad, please don't be angry. I know you think I betrayed you, but I swear I did what I had to do. Please trust me, just this one last time. I promise you'll understand soon. Don't try to stop what's happening. It's already done. I love you more than you'll ever know." Daniel's eyes blurred with tears as he reread those lines. What did she mean by "don't try to stop it"? And why write "you'll understand soon" instead of explaining? He clutched the letter, feeling both relief and confusion. She still loved him, that much was clear, but something was terribly wrong. He looked around the property, noticing small things that made him uneasy. The faint tire marks in the sand, a broken seashell near the gate, and the way the door's lock seemed freshly replaced. A strange feeling crept into his chest, a mix of fear and curiosity. He decided to call her, but her phone went straight to voicemail. "Emily, it's Dad. I found your letter. What's going on? Please call me." He ended the call and sat silently listening to the sea's rhythm, trying to calm the storm inside him. The wind picked up, rustling through the tall grass, and for a brief moment, he imagined he heard Linda's laughter carried by the breeze, as if she were there, watching over him. "If you were here, love," he whispered to the wind, "you'd know what to do." But all he heard in reply was the distant cry of gulls and the relentless crash of the waves. As the morning light grew brighter, Daniel stood up and turned toward his truck, unaware that just beyond the dunes, a dark sedan sat parked quietly, engine ending. Inside, two men in black suits watched him through tinted glass, one of them speaking softly into a phone. "He's here. He found the letter. Step two's in motion." The other man nodded, starting the engine. Daniel, lost in thought, didn't notice the car drive away toward town. He only knew one thing. He needed answers, and he was going to find out what Emily was hiding, even if it broke his heart all over again.
Daniel's hands gripped the steering wheel tighter as he drove away from the beach house, his heart pounding with a mixture of confusion and dread. The letter lay open on the passenger seat, fluttering slightly from the breeze coming through the half-open window. He kept rereading it in his mind. "Don't try to stop what's happening. You'll understand soon." Those words haunted him. They didn't sound like a daughter cutting ties or acting out of greed. They sounded like someone caught in something much bigger, something dangerous. Every instinct inside him screamed that Emily was in trouble. The question was, what kind of trouble could make her sell the house and disappear? He stopped by the local cafe, the same one where he and Emily used to eat ice cream after long beach walks. The waitress, Marlene, recognized him instantly. "Daniel, been ages since I've seen you," she said with a warm smile that faded when she saw his tense face. "Everything okay?" He hesitated before replying. "Marlene, did Emily come by here recently? Maybe with someone?" Marlene frowned, thinking. "Actually, yes, about 2 weeks ago. She wasn't alone. Some man, tall, maybe mid-30s, expensive-looking suit, didn't seem like the friendly type." Daniel's heart sank. Did she look scared? "Not exactly," Marlene said slowly, "but she was quiet, like she was trying not to draw attention." Daniel thanked her and left, his mind racing. Emily didn't have many friends, and he knew all of them. No one fit that description. The idea of her being involved with someone shady made his stomach churn. As he stepped outside, he noticed something odd. A black sedan parked across the street, the same kind he'd glimpsed near the beach house. For a second, he thought he was imagining it, but then the driver's window rolled down slightly, and a flash of movement caught his eye. Someone was taking photos of him. His pulse spiked. He turned sharply, pretending to check his phone, and quickly snapped a picture of the car's license plate before it sped off. Back in his truck, his hands trembled as he typed the number into an old police friend's database. He had retired from the force years ago, but still had access to certain connections. A few minutes later, his phone buzzed. "Daniel?" The voice on the other end said, "That plate belongs to a shell company registered in New York. It's been flagged before, suspected of money laundering and offshore real estate fraud. Why are you asking?" Daniel's breath caught. "Because my daughter might be mixed up with them." The line went silent for a moment. "Daniel," his friend said finally, "be careful. If she's tied to those people, you both might be in danger." He sat in his truck for a long time, staring out at the restless waves. Danger. That word echoed in his head like a warning bell. He thought back to the day he last saw Emily, her forced smile, her shaky hands, the way she avoided his eyes when he mentioned finances. At the time, he assumed she was just stressed from work, but now it all made sense. Maybe she didn't sell the house because she wanted to. Maybe she had to. But why that house? Why his home? The one filled with memories of Linda?
unless it wasn't about money. Maybe someone wanted that property for another reason, something buried in its land or history. Driven by desperation, Daniel went back to the house and began searching every room for clues. Dust covered the furniture, but everything was still in its place, except one thing. The picture frame that used to hold Linda's favorite photo was gone. In its place was a faint square of clean paint on the wall. He frowned. That photo wasn't valuable, but behind it, taped years ago, he had hidden an old safety deposit key. Only he and Linda had known about it. No, he whispered, realizing the implications. Emily must have found it, but why would she take the key? He rushed to the nearest bank, the one Linda used for her small art business before she passed. The manager, an elderly man named Carl, remembered him. "Daniel, it's been years. How can I help?" Daniel slipped the key across the counter. "I need access to this box. It belonged to my late wife." Carl hesitated. "I'm sorry, but someone already accessed it last week." Daniel froze. "Someone? Who?" "A young woman. She had identification under the name Emily Hastings." Daniel felt his knees weaken. She'd taken something from the box, but what it? Carl wouldn't say due to privacy policies, but his sympathetic look said enough. As he stepped outside the bank, the pieces of the puzzle began falling into place. The mysterious man, the sudden sale, the hidden key, the letter. Emily wasn't betraying him. She was protecting something. But what was so important it required secrecy, and why did it attract people involved in criminal networks? He sat in his truck, gripping the steering wheel tightly, his reflection in the rearview mirror showing eyes filled with both fear and determination. "Whatever you've gotten into, Emily, I'll find you. I'll fix this." He didn't realize that as he drove off, the same black sedan reappeared a few blocks behind, keeping a careful distance. Inside, the driver spoke into his earpiece. "The father's digging too deep. Tell her the old man is moving faster than expected." Somewhere across town, Emily's phone buzzed in a dimly lit motel room. She glanced at the message and closed her eyes, whispering, "Dad, please don't make this harder."
Daniel drove into the night, the hum of the old truck echoing his restless thoughts. The headlights cut through the fog like twin blades, illuminating the narrow road that wound through the cliffs. His heart felt heavy, not just from fear, but from the unbearable mixture of guilt and love only a parent can understand. He had failed to protect Emily once, when she was just 13, and Linda's illness consumed the family's joy. He had buried himself in work back then, trying to keep their finances afloat, while Emily slowly drifted away. He had promised himself he'd never let her face the world alone again. And yet here he was, chasing her shadow, unsure if he was saving her or walking into something far darker. The next morning, Daniel arrived at the city, exhaustion etched across his face. He parked outside an old apartment complex, one of the few addresses Emily had once mentioned during college. The building was falling apart, with peeling paint and flickering lights. He climbed the stairs slowly, listening for any sign of life. Apartment 3B, her old place. He knocked. Nothing. He was about to leave when he noticed a small envelope taped to the door, with his name scrawled in shaky handwriting. His stomach dropped. He tore it open, his eyes scanning the message. "Dad, if you found this, it means they're already watching you. Please don't try to find me. The house wasn't just a home. It was collateral. I did what I had to. Trust me, I love you." Daniel felt the floor tilt beneath him. Collateral. That word hit him like a stone. Collateral for what? He sank to his knees, gripping the note tightly. That's when he noticed a faint scent on the paper. Lavender perfume. Emily's. But beneath it was something else. The smell of smoke and metal. He turned the envelope over and saw a faint stamp on the back. A stylized letter S inside a circle. He didn't recognize it, but something about it chilled him. It felt official,
Corporate, maybe. Even criminal. He took the letter to his old friend Marcus, a retired detective who at once worked financial crimes. Marcus studied the logo, frowning. This symbol, I've seen it before. It's from a private investment group, Solstice Holdings. On paper, they're clean, but they've been suspected of laundering dirty money through real estate, art, and even inheritance accounts. If Emily got involved with them, she might have been tricked. Daniel leaned forward, his voice low and tight. Tricked how? Marcus sighed. They lure people in through false investment schemes, especially vulnerable ones. If she sold your house to pay them, it's possible she was covering a debt or blackmailed into silence. The word blackmail burned in his mind. He remembered the photo that had gone missing, the safety deposit box, the sudden behavior changes. Could they have found something in Linda's records? Something that could be used against them? Marcus interrupted his thoughts. Daniel, if these people have their hooks in her, she's not safe. Neither are you. Determined, Daniel decided to trace the cell of the beach house. He visited the county registrar's office and requested the transfer documents. The clerk handed him the file, but something immediately stood out. The buyer's name wasn't a person. It was Solstice Developments, Inc., a subsidiary of the same company Marcus had mentioned. His blood ran cold. Attached to the file was a contact address, a downtown law firm. Without thinking twice, he drove straight there. Inside the sleek glass building, the receptionist gave him a polite but guarded smile. "Do you have an appointment?" she asked. Daniel's voice was calm but edged with still. "Tell Mr. Cole I'm here about the Hastings property." Her smile faltered, and she quickly picked up the phone. Moments later, a tall, sharp-eyed man in an expensive gray suit appeared. "Mr. Hastings," he greeted smoothly. "I'm David Cole, legal counsel for Solstice. How can I help?" Daniel's jaw tightened. "You can start by telling me why your company bought my house through my daughter and what she's gotten herself into." Cole's lips curved slightly. "Your daughter was simply executing a transaction. Nothing illegal about that. The property was of interest to our investors." "Interest?" Daniel snapped. "That house was my wife's memory, my life." Cole shrugged. "I understand this is emotional for you, Mr. Hastings, but Emily was compensated fairly. In fact, she insisted the sale be rushed. Something about ensuring her father's debts were cleared." "Debts?" Daniel said, his voice rising. "I don't owe a cent." Cole's smile faded. "That's not what our records say." He slid a folder across the desk. Inside were financial statements, forged, showing Daniel owing large sums tied to offshore investments he'd never made. You see, Mr. Hastings, sometimes people close to us make unfortunate financial choices. We help them clean it up, but we expect repayment." Daniel's head spun. It was clear now. They had fabricated debts to trap Emily, using his name as leverage. "Where is she?" he demanded. Cole's expression hardened. "She's safe, as long as you don't interfere." Daniel leaned forward, his voice shaking with fury. "If you've hurt her," Cole interrupted, smiling again. "We haven't hurt anyone yet. But your daughter's cooperation keeps things peaceful. You should be proud, really. She's protecting you." Those words hit him like a knife. Protecting him. Everything began to make sense. The secret sale, the letter, the missing key. Emily had sacrificed the only piece of her mother's memory left to keep him safe. He stood silently, staring at Cole, memorizing every detail of his smug face. "You made a mistake," Daniel said quietly. Cole raised his eyebrow. "And what mistake is that?" Daniel turned to leave. "You think I'm an old man who won't fight back." As Daniel walked out of the building, he could feel eyes on him. Across the street, the same black sedan was parked again. This time, he didn't flinch. He stared straight at it, then turned away with quiet resolve. He now knew what this was. Not just a betrayal, but a war. And for the first time in years, Daniel Hastings felt alive again. He had lost his wife, nearly lost his daughter, but not his will. "Emily," he whispered as he climbed into his truck, "whatever you've gotten into, I'll tear down the world to get you out."
That night, the storm rolled in off the coast, turning the sky into a restless canvas of lightning and grief. Daniel sat in his truck outside a worn-down motel on the outskirts of town, the rain drumming steadily against the windshield. His reflection in the glass looked like a stranger's. Tired eyes, wet hair, jaw set with a stubborn determination he hadn't felt in years. He had spent the last few hours on the phone with Marcus, tracing whatever digital threads they could find connected to Solstice Holdings. The deeper they dug, the uglier it got. Offshore accounts, illegal land transfers, a pattern of targeting whittled families with high-value coastal properties. And every single one had vanished from the registry within months. Marcus's voice crackled over the line. "Dan, listen. There's something else. The beach property wasn't random. Solstice has been buying up every piece of land within a 10-mile stretch. They're building something big, and your place was the last piece they needed." Daniel frowned. "Building what?" "Not sure yet, but whatever it is, it's off the books, and they're desperate to keep it quiet." Daniel leans back in the seat, rubbing his temples. So Emily didn't just sell the house? She stopped them from taking it by force. Marcus hesitated. Maybe. But if she's still involved, that means they're using her to keep you quiet. A knock on the truck window made Daniel jump. A figure stood outside, drenched and shaking under the rain. For a split second, he thought it was Emily. But when the figure stepped into the glow of the streetlight, it was a young man, no older than 25. "Mr. Hastings?" the man said urgently. Daniel cracked the window, cautious. "Who are you?" "My name's Leo," he said, glancing nervously over his shoulder. "I worked for Solstice. Your daughter tried to help me, before they found out." Daniel opened the door slowly. "Get in." Inside, Leo wrung out his soaked jacket, his eyes darting around. "I shouldn't even be here," he whispered. "They track everyone. But I owed her. Emily saved my life." Daniel's heart clenched. "Where is she?" Leo shook his head. "I don't know exactly. They move her constantly. But she's not a prisoner, not exactly. She agreed to cooperate with them so they'd leave you alone. She gave them what they wanted." Daniel frowned. "The house?" "Not just the house," Leo said. "What was under it?" Daniel froze. "Under it?" Leo nodded. "There's an old storage chamber beneath the foundation. Decades ago, it belonged to a shipping company that smuggled things through private docks. When Solstice discovered that, they found a document, something valuable, maybe incriminating. Emily stumbled on it when she was helping with repairs last year. They found out she had it." Daniel tried to process it. "So that's why they went after her. She found something that could destroy them." Leo nodded again. "Yes. She thought she could bargain. Give them the document in exchange for your safety. That's why she sold the house, to make it look like she was cooperating." Daniel's stomach twisted. He had misjudged his daughter so badly. While he thought she was betraying him, she was actually shielding him from danger. Lightning flashed outside, and Leo flinched, glancing nervously toward the window. "You can't stay here," he whispered. "They know you're looking for her. They'll come." Daniel grabbed his keys. "Then we leave. But first, you're telling me everything." They drove through the storm as Leo recounted the rest. How Emily had been followed for weeks. How agents pressured her to hand over evidence her mother once kept hidden. "Wait," Daniel interrupted. "You mean Linda?" Leo nodded. "Yes.
Linda Hastings. She worked for an environmental research firm that was investigating corporate dumping in coastal zones. Solstice was one of the companies involved. When she died, her files disappeared. But apparently, one copy remained, buried in your beach property. The realization hit Daniel like a physical blow. All these years, he had mourned Linda's death as a cruel twist of fate, an illness that came out of nowhere. But now he saw the cracks in the story. The sudden hospital transfer, the missing test results, the company that had bought out her firm right after she passed. His breath caught. Are you saying Linda's death wasn't natural? Leo didn't meet his eyes. I can't say for sure, but Emily believed it wasn't. She told me her mother left clues hidden in her paintings. Daniel gripped the steering wheel tightly as tears stung his eyes. His late wife had died trying to expose them. His daughter had risked everything to finish what she started, and he had been blind to it all. Where would she go next? He asked, voice low. She tried to reach the journalist she trusted, a woman named Rachel Miles, works for the Beacon Post. If Emily is still alive, that's who she's trying to find. As dawn broke, the rain began to ease. Daniel pulled over by the cliffs overlooking the ocean, the same cliffs where he and Linda once walked hand in hand, dreaming of a future that now felt like someone else's life. He watched the sunlight pierce through the clouds and whispered, "You raised her well, Linda. She's stronger than either of us knew." Then his phone buzzed. A message. A known number. He opened it. "Stop looking for her, Daniel. You'll only get her killed." Attached was a photo. Emily, sitting in a dimly lit room, her face pale but determined. Daniel's grip tightened on the phone. For the first time in years, his voice carried the fire of a younger man as he said, "Then you'll have to kill me first."
Daniel barely slept that night. Every creak of the motel walls and every whisper of wind outside sounded like footsteps approaching his door. His mind churned with everything Leo had told him, the secret under the house, Linda's hidden files, the photo of Emily held somewhere against her will. He sat at the edge of the bed, holding his wife's old locket in his hand, the one he'd kept after her passing. Inside was a tiny picture of the three of them, smiling, happy, untouched by the darkness that now surrounded them. "I won't lose her too," he muttered under his breath. His eyes hardened as the first rays of dawn filtered through the dirty curtains. It was time to stop reacting. It was time to fight back. He drove to Marcus's small house on the outskirts of town. The ex-detective opened the door wearing a wrinkled shirt and a grim expression. "You look like hell," Marcus said. "Good. Means you're ready to do something stupid." Daniel smirked weakly. "Something necessary." Inside, maps and old police files covered the table. Marcus had already been digging. "I ran a background check on David Cole," Marcus said. "Guess what? He's not a real lawyer. His bar credentials are fake. He's ex-corporate security for Solstice, linked to offshore accounts and 3 missing persons." Daniel leaned over the table, scanning the documents. "So he's more than a lawyer. He's a handler." Marcus nodded. "Exactly. He manages people they can't control. And if Emily's under his watch, she's not safe." Leo, sitting in the corner nursing a coffee, looked up. "I might know where they're keeping her." Daniel's eyes shot up. "Where?" Leo hesitated. "There's a property north of the city, old warehouse near the docks. That's where Solstice moves their shipments before they disappear overseas. Emily mentioned it once, said if anything happened to her, that's where evidence would go." Without wasting time, they loaded into Daniel's truck. The closer they got to the docks, the grimmer it became. Rusted containers stacked like tombstones, the air thick with salt and oil. Daniel parked a few blocks away, and they approached on foot. The warehouse loomed ahead, gray and lifeless, guarded by 2 men smoking near the entrance. Marcus whispered, "We'll need a distraction."
Daniel's mind flashed back to the police training he'd had decades ago, just enough to be dangerous. He picked up a loose pipe and hurled it against the pile of metal crates down the alley. The clatter echoed sharply, drawing the guards' attention. As they moved toward the sound, Daniel and Leo slipped inside. The interior smelled of damp wood and machine oil. Shafts of morning light filtered through cracks in the ceiling, illuminating rows of metal boxes marked with shipping labels. Solstice Marine Division. Daniel moved cautiously between them, his pulse quickening. At the far end, a door stood slightly ajar. Voices drifted out, one of them unmistakably Cole's. He was saying, "You told me she destroyed the files." A woman's voice answered, trembling but defiant. "I did what you asked. Now let my father go." Daniel's breath caught. Emily. He moved closer, peering through the crack. Emily sat on a chair, wrists tied loosely, a bruise on her cheek, but fire in her eyes. Cole leaned against the desk, smirking. "You think this is about your father? This is about control. Those files your mother hid, they could end a billion-dollar empire. You were smart enough to find them, but not smart enough to realize they'd destroy you too." Emily spat at his feet. "You're wrong. I already sent copies to the press." Cole froze, then laughed darkly. "You think you're the first one to try that? We control the press, sweetheart." Daniel's rage boiled. He wanted to charge in, but Marcus's hand on his shoulder stopped him. The ex-detective had quietly joined him from behind, mouthing, "Wait." They needed leverage. Marcus signaled to Leo, who slipped around the side of the room, moving toward a control panel that powered the security system. With a quick motion, Leo cut the power. The warehouse plunged into darkness. Chaos erupted. Cole shouted, "Get the lights back on!" And that was Daniel's cue. He burst into the room, grabbing the nearest guard and slamming him against the wall. Emily screamed, "Dad!" as Cole reached for a gun, but Marcus was faster. A sharp crack echoed as he disarmed Cole and kicked the weapon away. In the dim emergency light, Daniel rushed to untie Emily. She fell into his arms, sobbing. "I told you not to come," she whispered, her voice shaking. "You could have been killed." Daniel cupped her face. "You're my daughter. There's nowhere I wouldn't go." Cole, bleeding from a cut on his forehead, laughed weakly from the floor. "You think you've won, old man? You have no idea what you've stepped into." Marcus knelt beside him. "We know enough, and soon the world will too." Leo pulled a hard drive from one of the crates. "This is it. Everything. The land deals, the accounts, the bribes." Emily wasn't bluffing. These files prove everything. Cole's smirk faded. "That's proprietary information," he hissed. Marcus replied coldly, "No, that's evidence." They didn't have long. More guards were outside, shouting and trying to force the door open. Marcus motioned toward a side exit. "Go now." They sprinted through the shadows, gunfire ringing behind them. Daniel shielded Emily with his body as bullets tore through the walls. They burst into the open, rain pouring down, and dove behind a stack of shipping containers. A black SUV screeched to a halt nearby. Leo's contact, a journalist from the Beacon Post named Rachel Miles, stepping out with a camera crew. "You got it?" she shouted. Leo tossed her the hard drive. "Everything is on there." Cole staggered out of the warehouse, shouting into his earpiece, "Stop them! Don't let that footage leave the docks!" But it was too late. Rachel's crew had already gone live, broadcasting the data feed directly to the Beacon Post servers. The story was out. The whole world would know what Solstice had done. Daniel turned to Emily, pulling her close as sirens echoed in the distance. "You did it," he said softly. She shook her head, tears mixing with the rain. "We did it." For the first time in years, Daniel felt something that had been missing since Linda's death. Peace. Not because the fight was over, but because he finally understood his daughter. She hadn't betrayed him. She'd become the very best part of both her parents, brave, relentless, and full of heart. But as the police swarmed the docks and arrested Solstice agents, a chilling realization hit Daniel. Cole was gone. He had vanished in the chaos, leaving only a bloodstain and a promise of revenge whispered through the storm. Daniel held Emily tighter, whispering, "It's over now." But deep down, he knew it wasn't. Not yet.
The aftermath of the warehouse confrontation was chaos incarnate. Police sirens wailed in the distance as the rain-slicked streets reflected flashing red and blue lights. Daniel and Emily, soaked and exhausted, huddled under a weathered awning, while Marcus and Leo coordinated with the arriving officers. Reporters had already begun swarming the scene, cameras rolling, microphones thrust forward. Emily's eyes darted nervously, but she held the hard drive tightly, proof of everything Solstice had tried to hide. Daniel could feel her trembling beneath his coat, but he said nothing, letting the city's storm and noise fill the space between their shared fear and determination. He realized then how much Emily had grown, from the daughter he thought he knew into a woman capable of confronting darkness head-on. Rachel Miles, the journalist from the Beacon Post, was already speaking to the crowd, narrating the exposé live. Solstice Holdings, a multinational investment company, has been implicated in laundering money, covering up environmental violations, and coercing families to keep silent, she said. Daniel watched Emily's face as the reporter's questions came fast and furious. She looked at him, eyes wide and pale, but full of relief. "Dad, it's over, I think." Daniel swallowed hard, hugging her tightly. "It's not over until the people responsible are behind bars," he murmured. Back at the docks, police had begun arresting lower-level operatives while securing the warehouse and the surrounding area. Marcus scanned the crowd of law enforcement and civilians with an experienced eye. "Cole isn't here," he muttered, voice low. "He's gone, but the rest are contained." Daniel's jaw tightened. "He won't stay gone for long. He's clever, resourceful, and dangerous. We have to anticipate his next move." Leo chimed in. "We've got the hard drive. Everything we need is there. As long as we release it strategically, there's no way he can recover it without going to jail or worse." Daniel's thoughts drifted to Linda. The discovery of her hidden files, the documents Emily had protected, revealed a broader conspiracy. Solstice had orchestrated a series of schemes targeting coastal properties connected to environmental research, all while laundering money and intimidating anyone who tried to uncover the truth. It became chillingly clear that Linda's death was never just a tragedy. Someone had deliberately ensured she wouldn't expose them, someone with influence and power. Emily's plan had been to finish what her mother started, and Daniel understood now that every risk she had taken, every secret she had kept, had been for him, for justice, and for the truth. The city seemed to hold its breath as the story unfolded. Government agencies, alerted by Rachel's live broadcast, began investigations. Daniel and Emily sat together on the steps outside the police perimeter, drenched but alive, watching the authorities comb through Solstice's papers. Emily's hands shook as she clutched the hard drive. "I thought I was doing all of this alone. I didn't think you'd understand." Daniel smiled faintly, brushing a wet strand of hair from her face. "You've always been braver than me," he said. "I just had to catch up." Hours later, they were escorted to a secure facility where federal agents began sorting through Solstice's illicit activities. For Daniel, it felt surreal. A world he had only glimpsed through news stories, now laid bare because of his daughter's courage. Emily explained in careful detail how she had navigated Solstice's manipulations, the fake debts, the coerced cooperation, and the hidden messages left by Linda. Each revelation was another piece of the puzzle, another thread connecting the family's past with the present fight for justice. As the sun set, casting long shadows across the waterfront, Daniel finally allowed himself to breathe. The immediate danger had passed, but he knew Cole's absence didn't mean the end. Still, he had gained something far more valuable than revenge or closure: understanding. Emily hadn't betrayed him. She had protected him, just as Linda had tried to protect their family years ago.
The weight of grief that had pressed on him since his wife's death began to lift slightly, replaced by a cautious hope. Then a new message appeared on Daniel's secure phone. Unknown number, encrypted. He hesitated, fingers trembling as he opened it. You've won the battle, but not the war. Solstice isn't finished, and the truth about Linda is deeper than you know. Be ready. Daniel's eyes met Emily's. She swallowed hard, reading over his shoulder. It's her, she said quietly. Mom's work. It's bigger than we thought. Daniel nodded, the storm outside echoing the turmoil within him. Then we keep fighting. Together. For the first time in decades, he felt a bond renewed. Father and daughter united not just by blood, but by courage, resilience, and the shared mission to uncover the truth. As night fully fell, the city lights flickering across the rain-slicked streets, Daniel knew one thing. Solstice had underestimated the Harpers, and they were about to learn, in the hardest way possible, that the past they thought was buried was very much alive and ready to fight back.
The morning after the dock's chaos, Daniel and Emily were escorted to a secure federal office to give their statements. The city felt unusually quiet, the storm's aftermath leaving streets gleaming and reflective, almost surreal. Inside, the fluorescent lights hummed overhead, casting a stark white glow on polished floors and anxious faces. Agents moved briskly, typing reports and coordinating with investigators. Daniel noticed Rachel Miles sitting nearby, laptop opened, her presence a reminder that the world was watching. Emily held the hard drive tightly, eyes scanning every detail around her. Despite exhaustion, there was a renewed determination in her posture. She was ready to face what had been hidden for years. The lead investigator, a tall woman named Special Agent Harper, gestured them to a conference room. "Mr. Hastings, Miss Hastings," she said, her tone professional yet calm. "We've reviewed preliminary evidence from Solstice Holdings. What you have is substantial. If the documents are authentic, it implicates Solstice in multiple illegal activities: money laundering, coercion, corporate espionage, and potentially more serious crimes. We'll need your full cooperation." Daniel nodded, his jaw set. "We'll do everything necessary, but there's more. My late wife, Linda, her work is tied to this. We believe her death was not an accident." The room went silent. Agent Harper's eyes sharpened. "Go on." Emily took a deep breath. "My mother discovered Solstice's schemes years ago. She was an environmental researcher and had been tracking illegal coastal dumping, off-the-books property acquisitions, and hidden offshore accounts. She kept a copy of her findings at the beach house, what Solstice wanted from us. That's why they pressured me to sell it, to keep the evidence out of the wrong hands." Harper nodded thoughtfully. "We've seen patterns like this before. Families targeted when someone uncovers inconvenient truths. It's rare, but not unheard of. What makes your case unique is the scale, and the fact that your family was directly threatened to suppress the information." Daniel leaned back in his chair, voice low but firm. "They've underestimated us. Emily protected me while trying to complete my wife's work. I won't let anyone else be harmed." Harper studied them for a moment. "We'll need a full timeline. Dates, names, communications. The more detailed, the better. It will strengthen the federal case against Solstice." Daniel opened his notebook, already filled with dates, observations, and every detail from Emily and Leo. He began recounting events meticulously, from the letter to the discovery of the hidden chamber, the warehouse confrontation, and the leaks to Rachel. Emily filled in gaps with a steady voice, her courage shining through despite visible bruises. Later that day, the press caught wind of the investigation. News headlines flashed across every screen.
Solstice Holdings exposed. Widow's daughter uncovers corruption in corporate crimes. Daniel watched Emily's reaction, amazed at her composure. She had become the center of attention overnight, a whistleblower who had turned danger into revelation. He felt pride swelling inside him, mixed with the constant ache of knowing how close they had come to losing her. Yet, he knew the danger wasn't entirely gone. Cole was still at large. The higher-ups within Solstice might attempt retaliation or further cover-ups. Then came the most shocking revelation. Harper's office received an anonymous tip with attached documents, files that directly connected Linda Hastings' death to a larger corporate conspiracy. Daniel and Emily leaned over the printed pages, stunned. Linda had uncovered illegal offshore accounts and hidden contracts tied to Solstice's top executives, including some involved in politics. Her death, previously believed to be natural or accidental, had been orchestrated to silence her. Emily gasped. All these years, she tried to protect us, to keep us from danger while leaving breadcrumbs for me to follow. I should have noticed sooner. Daniel's hand rested on hers, firm and reassuring. You did exactly what you needed to do. She would be proud. The office buzzed with activity as agents began connecting the dots. Solstice's executives were now under investigation, and several were already detained for questioning. The public response was overwhelming. Social media erupted with discussions, debates, and outrage. Daniel realized that the truth was spreading faster than Solstice could contain it. He said, "They thought fear would keep us quiet. They thought isolation would stop the story, but we turned it into a movement." As the day drew to a close, Daniel and Emily were escorted to a secure location. Outside, the city's skyline shimmered in the golden sunset, the storm's clouds breaking apart. It was a symbolic moment. After months of grief, danger, and betrayal, there was clarity, purpose, and a chance for justice. Emily rested her head on Daniel's shoulder, exhausted but unbroken. He looked at her, realizing she had inherited her mother's intelligence, courage, and persistence. Together, they had uncovered not only Solstice's crimes, but also the deeper truths about Linda's death, truths that had remained hidden for decades. Yet, a lingering unease persisted. Daniel knew that Cole was still out there, and Solstice's powerful allies wouldn't stop their attempts at covering up the truth. But now, armed with evidence, public attention, and federal support, they had the upper hand. Daniel felt a strange mix of dread and empowerment. "We've won battles, Emily," he said quietly, "but the war isn't over. And when it comes to her death, we're going to make sure the world knows the truth." Emily squeezed his hand, her determination matching his. "We'll finish it, Dad. For Mom. For everyone they've tried to destroy." The sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows over the city. Shadows that represented the past, the secrets, and the battles fought. Daniel looked out over the skyline, resolute. One thing was certain. Linda's story, Emily's bravery, and their fight for justice were far from over. And Daniel Hastings would be ready for whatever came next.
The next few days were a whirlwind of activity. Federal agents combed through Solstice's financial records, journalists continued broadcasting live updates, and Daniel and Emily were constantly debriefed, their days consumed by endless questioning and planning. Yet through the chaos, Daniel never left Emily's side. They moved together through the secure corridors, an unspoken bond guiding them through the storm of legalities, media attention, and fear. Each report, each leak, each arrest felt like progress. But Daniel knew one man remained free: David Cole.
Cole, the architect of their torment, had vanished into the shadows, and Daniel understood instinctively that as long as he remained at large, true justice was incomplete. Late one evening, Daniel received an encrypted tip via the secure line Marcus had set up. The message was brief but chilling. Cole is planning to move the remaining files tonight. Warehouse 9, abandoned dock area. One chance. Don't hesitate. His blood ran cold. He gathered Emily, Marcus, and Leo in a quiet room. "This is it," he said, his voice steady but heavy with urgency. "Cole's moving whatever he hasn't already tried to destroy. This is our last chance to stop him and secure everything. For Mom, for us, and for everyone he's harmed." Emily nodded, determination flashing in her eyes. "We finish this tonight. No more hiding." The night was thick with fog as they approached the abandoned dock. The silhouette of Warehouse 9 emerged through the mist, massive and foreboding. Daniel's hands gripped his flashlight tightly as they moved closer, scanning for guards. Marcus whispered instructions, assigning roles. Leo would disable the exterior surveillance. Daniel and Emily would enter from separate points to flank Cole, and Marcus would remain near the exit with the vehicle ready for extraction. Every step forward was tense, silent, the weight of the past and the danger of the present pressing down on them. Inside, the warehouse smelled of oil, rust, and stale air. Stacks of crates formed a maze, and faint light leaked from a small office at the far end. Daniel could hear the low murmur of voices, Cole and two men moving crates. Emily's movements were precise, silent. They reached the office simultaneously from opposite sides. Daniel peeked through the cracked door. Cole was hunched over a laptop, monitoring the transfer of files to an encrypted server. The crates around him were labeled with corporate markings, evidence he had planned to smuggle overseas. Daniel's pulse quickened. This was the heart of Solstice's operation. Suddenly, Emily stepped into view, flashlight in hand. Cole froze, eyes widening. "You again," he sneered. "I told you the father would come crawling eventually." Daniel pushed the door open fully. "Not crawling, running you out." Cole drew a gun in a flash, but Marcus's quick shot from the shadows disarmed him, the weapon clattering across the floor. Chaos erupted. Cole lunged, but Daniel tackled him to the ground, their struggle violent and desperate. Emily seized the laptop, downloading the remaining files onto the secure hard drive they had brought. Cole's arrogance faltered as the realization hit him. Every piece of evidence he had worked to hide was now in federal hands. You don't understand," he shouted, voice trembling. "These files, they're worthless without me controlling the servers." Emily's eyes were icy. "Not anymore. We've already backed them up, and the FBI is monitoring the transfer. Your control is over." Cole tried to flee, but Marcus intercepted, restraining him with handcuffs. For the first time, Cole looked genuinely afraid, no longer the smug, untouchable figure who had haunted their lives for months. Daniel stepped forward, chest heaving. He looked at Cole, then at Emily, realizing the magnitude of what had just happened. "You underestimated us," he said quietly. "You thought fear could control a family. You were wrong." Emily nodded, tears glinting in the dim light. "You tried to erase everything my mother worked for, everything we fought to protect. But truth can't be hidden forever." Cole's face twisted in rage, but there was no escape. The long arm of justice had finally reached him. Outside, federal agents secured the warehouse in arrest of Cole's accomplices. The press captured every moment, broadcasting the dramatic conclusion of a saga that had gripped the nation. Daniel held Emily close, feeling a wave of relief and triumph wash over him. Months of grief, fear, and uncertainty were finally giving way to justice, vindication, and the preservation of Linda's legacy. Emily whispered, voice soft but full of pride. "We did it, Dad. We really did it." Daniel smiled, brushing wet strands of hair from her face. "No," he said, "you did it. You were the one who never gave up, who risked everything.
I only followed your lead." As dawn broke over the city, painting the waterfront in gold, Daniel reflected on the journey. The beach house once symbolized family, memories, and love, had become a battleground for truth and justice. Emily had transformed from a daughter under threat into a fearless defender of her family and her mother's work. Daniel understood in that quiet moment that the fight against corruption, deceit, and danger wasn't just about recovering what was lost. It was about honoring those who had been silenced and protecting those who remained. And though Cole's arrest marked the end of one chapter, Daniel knew the ripple effects of Solstice's crimes would continue to unfold. Yet for the first time in months, he allowed himself a sense of peace. Justice had been served. Truth had prevailed. And as he and Emily looked toward the horizon, side by side, they knew that together they could face anything: the shadows of the past, the threats of the present, and the promise of a future built on resilience, courage, and unbreakable family bonds.
Weeks had passed since the dramatic takedown of Solstice Holdings, but the world still seemed to move in a blur around Daniel and Emily. The media frenzy had subsided, but stories about the corruption, the hidden files, and the courageous father-daughter duo continued to circulate online and in print. Daniel often found himself staring out at the horizon, the waves reflecting the soft gold of late afternoon sunlight, thinking about how fragile life could be, and yet how resilient the human spirit was. Emily had returned to their home, bringing with her the quiet strength and determination that had guided them through months of danger. Though still recovering from exhaustion and the psychological strain of the ordeal, she carried herself with the poise of someone who had faced darkness and come through victorious. One morning, Daniel and Emily returned to the site of their beach house, now officially secured by federal authorities, for one final visit. The house, which had once been a sanctuary filled with laughter, holidays, and family memories, stood silent but intact. Daniel ran his fingers over the railing, remembering the summers spent with Linda and Emily, the smell of salt in the air, and the sound of seagulls overhead. Emily approached slowly, her hand brushing lightly over the weathered fence. "It feels different now," she murmured. Daniel nodded, a mixture of sorrow and pride filling his chest. "It's a reminder of what we've lost, what we fought for, and everything we've protected." Inside the house, the memories seemed to echo in the empty rooms. Daniel walked to the kitchen, where he and Linda had spent countless mornings sipping coffee and planning their days. He ran a hand over the countertop, the texture familiar and grounding. Emily followed him into the living room, where photographs lined the walls, snapshots of birthdays, Christmases, and quiet moments of happiness. "Mom would be proud," Daniel said softly, voice breaking slightly. Emily smiled, tears in her eyes. "She is proud, Dad, and so am I. We've kept her legacy alive." As they moved through the house, they discovered one final hidden compartment, a small, nondescript drawer in the master bedroom. Inside were letters from Linda, meticulously written and carefully stored. Each one told a story of foresight, courage, and hope. She knew the risks she faced, the forces she was up against, but she also believed in her family's resilience and injustice. Emily held one letter, reading aloud. "If anything happens to me, know that you have the strength to fight, to protect, and to uncover the truth. Daniel, guide her. Emily, trust yourself. Our family's love is stronger than any deceit." Daniel felt a lump in his throat as he embraced his daughter. The weight of fear, anger, and loss had finally begun to lift, replaced by gratitude and a sense of purpose. They had not only survived, but they had also honored Linda's courage by bringing Solstice to justice and exposing the corruption that had threatened their lives. For the first time in months, Daniel allowed himself a full, deep breath, the tension in his shoulders easing. Back in the city, the fallout from the Solstice scandal continued to unfold. Government agencies moved swiftly to investigate the company's higher-level executives, leading to more arrests, resignations, and financial restitution. Emily's bravery became the subject of news profiles, awards, and invitations to speak at forums on corporate accountability. Daniel, though still private by nature, felt proud watching his daughter receive recognition not just for surviving, but for her integrity, intelligence, and unwavering moral compass.
They had both been tested, and both had emerged stronger. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the sand, Daniel and Emily walked along the beach. The sound of waves rolling gently to shore was a comforting reminder of continuity, life, and resilience. Emily paused, holding Daniel's hand. "Dad, I don't think I could have done any of this without you. You believed in me, even when it seemed hopeless." Daniel smiled, squeezing her hand tightly. "We believed in each other. That's what carried us through." The final twist came quietly, almost imperceptibly. As they returned to the house one last time before it was to be auctioned for charity, Emily noticed a small envelope tucked beneath the floorboard, something she hadn't seen before. Inside was a USB drive labeled simply, "For the Future." Daniel raised an eyebrow. Emily looked thoughtful. "Mom must have left this as a final safeguard, something for us to uncover when the time was right." They shared a quiet, knowing smile. It was a promise that their fight for truth, justice, and integrity was ongoing, but that they were now ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. As night settled over the coast, the stars reflected off the ocean waves. Daniel and Emily stood together, father and daughter, bonded not only by blood, but by the trials, revelations, and victories that had defined the past months. They had faced betrayal, danger, and grief, yet they had also discovered courage, love, and the power of unity. The world might continue to throw challenges their way, but they had learned that even in the darkest times, resilience, intelligence, and unbreakable family bonds could overcome the most formidable obstacles. And in that quiet moment, with the ocean whispering softly against the shore, Daniel realized one profound truth. They had not only survived the storm, they had become the storm, unstoppable, unyielding, and ready for whatever came next.